Great. Hi everyone, welcome to our, what month are we in? Our April Masterclass, just the end of April. For those of you watching, just while we wait, we'd love to hear where you are and who you are. So if you just want to put in the chat, like what program you're from, what uni, whether you're an alumni, and where in the country you are, it would be lovely to say hello and just hear from you. And we're going to start in about 1 minute. We're just waiting for everyone to come in. So, perfect. Hi Anjali. This is one of our lovely creative access interns at Verso Publishers in Northampton, lovely. And everyone else, please do put your name and your location on the chat so we know who you are. Brilliant. So I think we will start. It's 3 minutes past 5 according to my calculations, so we don't want to take up any more time for those of you who are, so you're not waiting too long. So welcome. As I said, my name's Josie and I am the Chief Executive and one of the founders of Creative Access. I hope that most of you watching are familiar with us, but if you're not, just to give you a 30-second intro, that we're a social enterprise. We are dedicated to supporting those from from communities that are underrepresented in the creative industries to entering and thriving in the industry. And by that we mean anyone who faces any significant barrier to employment. So we're really pleased today to have lots of people from our different programs joining us. We've got obviously our interns and our alumni. We've got people from our Set Access program, from our Penguin Random House mentoring program. We should have some of our Kickstart first cohort trainees, work placements. We will have some of our participants from our partner universities, from Kingston, from Goldsmiths, from London South Bank and others. And of course, some of our Manchester International Festival friends and connections. So welcome to all of you. We love these events and we are really blessed that actually one of the advantages of being in lockdown is that we've been able to reach people all over the country and have really fantastic attendance from people all around. I'm just looking even at the chat, all these different cities coming in, somebody in Cape Town, hi Karina, and that is an amazing thing to have for us. So today is really special for us because we've been working with the Manchester International Festival, or talking to the Manchester International Festival for a long time, and it's really lovely that we're actually able to connect. And we all know that festivals have been, something that we're all desperate to get into now that we're finally getting a bit of normality, resuming post lockdown. And I know that the MIF have just published the most amazing programme with Patti Smith and Arlo Potts, to name but a few, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that later. But we know it's a massive undertaking and so many different bits to a live event, and also I imagine a lot of virtual stuff as well. So we're really excited to be joined today by this fantastic panel. Just to say to you before we commence, and I'm going to pass over to our chair, that if you have any questions, please write it in the Q&A function and we'll get around to answering some of them later. I know quite a lot of you have submitted questions in advance, which is really helpful. I know the panel's going to do their best to answer them. But if you have any questions to any of the panelists now or during the session, please put them in the Q&A function. Please do tag us and the MIF. We're at _creative access, and we'll be live tweeting. We will be recording this event if you want to circulate it to anybody afterwards. So without further ado, I'm going to pass on to our chair, and who is Ebony. Ebony is the HR administrator at the Manchester International Festival and knows absolutely everything to do with it. And I know we're in excellent hands. And of course, she'll, I believe, do introductions to Kaya, Kwang, Rosanna, and Yvonne. So I look forward to hearing everything you have to tell us. Over to you, Ebony.
Amazing. Thanks so much for that introduction, Josie. So yeah, hi everyone, my name is Ebony Montague. I use she, they pronouns. And as Josie mentioned, I'm the HR administrator at Manchester International Festival. So welcome to MIS Festival and Events Masterclass with Creative Access. It's great to have you all here with us, and thank you for joining us this evening. So yeah, like Josie mentioned, I will be your host this evening, and myself, along with my lovely co-workers, we're talking a bit about MIF, a bit about our roles and what it's like to work on festival and events. We'll also be answering your questions, and some that you've submitted to us beforehand, as well as some that you can submit to us in the Q&A chat box. So, a bit about MIF for those who don't know. Manchester International Festival is an arts and cultural organisation set back up in 2007, hosting a festival by the same name for 18 days in July every 2 years. It was created to be a platform for new and exciting work by both local artists in Greater Manchester, as well as those from around the world. During the festival, there's lots to experience in terms of shows, but also lots of other activities our audiences can participate in. We always have a range of creative engagement projects, such as Festival in My House, which gives Manchester residents the opportunity to host a micro festival, as well as volunteering opportunities in various different roles. We also have an audience favourite, Festival Square, an outdoor space of food, drink, and a programme of live acts on offer. MIF have worked with artists such as Bjork, Skepta, Janelle Monáe, Steve McQueen, and Yoko Ono. And yesterday, we just announced our MIF 21 programme for this year's festival. Now, as you can imagine, this year's festival will of course be like no other, not only in the programming, but also in how it will be delivered. Every show, event and performance will be COVID compliant, and all of our teams are working extremely hard to welcome back our audiences safely. This year's festival will give you a sense of what we have to offer as we head towards the Factory. The Factory is a new creative venue that will be MIF's new home and home to both local and international artists. Again, creating and showcasing new work, but on a year-round scale. We'll also still run the festival every 2 years, with the Factory being the main venue space for shows. But back to what you're here to learn about. What's it actually like working on a festival, and what's it like to work in events? Well, it's exciting and challenging, but very rewarding. There are so many different roles and teams across MIF that work together to bring a unique experience for one big moment every 2 years. So feel free to ask us lots of questions in the chat box. We'll get through as many as possible, and hopefully you enjoy the session and get a lot out of it. I'm now going to ask my colleagues to introduce themselves and talk a little bit more about their roles and how they got into them, starting with Yvonne.
Hello everybody, it's great to see you all. My name's Yvonne. I am Trust and Foundations Manager at Manchester International Festival. I started my career in a very different sector, in the corporate sector. And for many years I worked for Ernst & Young, or EY as they're known now, which is a professional services firm. I've also worked in recruitment agencies, travelling across the UK and Europe. I started in the arts in 2003 at Contact Theatre. I started as an administration manager and then moved to become head of admin and development, and then head of development over a 9-year period. The reason why the shift happened for me was because I had a really close relationship with the board of trustees, and it was a trustee who said to me, actually, I think you'd be brilliant in this role because you talk so well about the organisation and you're passionate about it. So that's how that journey began. When I left Contact, I moved to an organisation called Onside. Now, Onside are an incredible organisation who build and set up youth zones across the UK. From Carlisle to London, everywhere you go, there's a new youth zone popping up. Youth zones are state-of-the-art youth centres for young people, but they've got the best of everything in there and really talented staff driving them through. And in that job, I was a Grants, Trust and Foundations Manager, securing funding for some brilliant projects that are still up and running today. I then left Onside after a short period and went to work as fundraising manager at George House Trust. George House Trust are Manchester's charity supporting people living with HIV. Again, I was fundraising for short, medium and long-term projects and meeting a whole new community of Manchester Gay Village business owners, drag queens, Manchester Pride, community volunteers and health professionals. So it was a real change in the types of people that I was working with, even though the thread of my job was still pretty much the same. One of the things I did was introduce them to patronage, and I secured Russell T Davies as their first patron, who you might know as the writer of the incredible TV series It's a Sin. Now, after George House Trust, I fancied a break from fundraising because I've been doing it for quite a while. And so I sidestepped into the exciting world of prospect research at the University of Manchester. And I was working in their division of development and alumni relations, so I was still within the fundraising function. But my role now was to find out as much information as possible about university alumni who were likely to support the university's research, development, or their cultural assets. It was a brilliant job for me because I'm extremely nosy and I like to know lots of things about people. So it was a really interesting part of the fundraising cycle. And it can be really weird to know so much about people you've never met or the inner workings of a business. But eventually I was lured back into the arts by Manchester International Festival. And this is where I am today as their Trust and Foundations Manager. I'll talk a little bit more later on about what that role means. Over to Rosanna.
Hi everyone, hi, I'm Rosanna and I'm the engagement coordinator working in the creative engagement team at Manchester International Festival. And my role involves supporting the planning, organisation and delivery of creative activities with people across Greater Manchester to make sure local people from lots of different backgrounds get to take part in and feel represented in the events we put on. Before I was at MIF, I had a bit of a kind of non-linear, weird journey into the arts where I was thinking about becoming a social worker, and I did a lot of voluntary work with charities supporting isolated young people. I also worked in the hospitality and customer service roles, in call centres and yeah, in like lots of different kind of front of house positions. But I always had a passion and interest in arts and creative events. So I started to look at ways to combine my interests in both areas. And in 2015, I kind of like took a chance on a role that I saw advertised through my uni website that was working at the Edinburgh Fringe as a flyer for a kind of a comedy association. And taking up that role was kind of like my first like foot in the door, I guess, into working in like arts and creative jobs. And working for such a big international festival like the Fringe, yeah, and it was a temporary summer role, but I got to meet so many people and connect with people kind of from all over the world. And but doing that position, I also realised like how kind of it wasn't accessible and it was quite elitist in lots of ways, and there were only opportunities there for certain types of people. And I became really, very passionate about changing that. And I wanted to find a more kind of permanent role or different purpose in working in an arts organisation. So I looked for ways to combine my interest in working with and some of the charity work I'd done before with like young people and vulnerable adults, and that an arts engagement sort of fit into that. So I applied to do a course at Manchester Uni in arts management with a focus on creative learning, and that course also had an industry placement link with Manchester International Festival. And after I'd done the placement, a job opportunity luckily came up, and I applied and I got it, and then I've been here for the past 3 years. So that's how I got to working at MIF.
I think it might be me next. Hi, I'm Kwang Lee. I've been working with Manchester International Festival for about 3 years as well, so roughly the same time as Rosanna. And my journey started, I suppose, in the arts when I did an art degree. I did fine arts. And after leaving, I was thinking, oh, I've got fine art. It's not very useful in terms of getting a job. What do I do now? But I've always been interested in organizing things. And even as a student, I organized things with my fellow students. So I managed to get a job in as a center attendant in Chinese Art Center, which was in Manchester. I didn't study here. I came here for work, in a sense, to Manchester. And it was kind of my way to learn, because I as a young artist then, I was thinking, this was many, many years ago, by the way, many decades ago. I wanted to learn how galleries work as a young artist, like how do you find out about my sector? So I kind of got into organizing shows with the then exhibitions officer then, and learning about budgets, learning about project management, learning about how to deal with or how to interact with audiences, which I think is something that as creatives, sometimes people don't really think about at the forefront of their minds, and how to assist in workshops for children in schools, and also from the community. So it was a real learning curve for me, and I kind of got really interested in organizing shows with artists and with communities and with other artists, and meeting my peers was really important, because then I started doing lots of artist-led stuff with my peers across Manchester. We did shows, exhibitions with peer groups in Liverpool, in Newcastle, in sort of the rest of Britain in a sense. And that got me into Castlefield Gallery, also in Manchester. Castlefield Gallery was started in 1984, and I joined in about 97 or so. And I kind of worked in different roles at Castlefield Gallery. In fact, I started as maternity cover for administrator, because I was still working as an artist, needing some income. So I kind of got approached by a gallery and say, oh, you've got some skills, you've got organizational skills, you can curate shows, you can do things. But actually that role wasn't creative. And I'll talk maybe a little bit more about balancing the creativity and also the organizational part of our jobs, or my job anyway. From there, I became the director after many different roles and many different years and doing things. So eventually I kind of became the director of Castlefield Gallery, and working with, what I really enjoyed was, again, working with artists to create amazing new things or new projects for the public. So that bridging between the creativity and how people can enjoy or look at something and wonder or engage with it. In 2016, I left Castlefield Gallery and was freelancing for a bit. And I traveled a bit, and I wanted to work with universities and individual artists and artist-led groups. Again, that artists and artist-led still feature in my working life. Coming to MIF was really key, because I wanted to work in a larger kind of organization with larger budget, but also internationally. I think at Castlefield Gallery was quite a small operation, so we didn't really work with international artists that much. So what I really enjoy here is our link with artists, still working with artists, but actually the timescales are quite different. The projects has many different teams, and actually working with all my colleagues here is what makes it work really. So we're really happy to announce the program yesterday, as Ebony was saying, so do check that out, and I will leave it there for now.
Thanks, Kwang. I think that means that I'm last. So my name is Kaya. I work within the digital team at MIF, and I'm the content producer. I've probably been here about 2 to 3 years, and it's my role to really work with each department on our online program. This might include collaborating with our producers like Kwang on our artistic works and how they're represented online, or how the projects can be on our channels or on others. I work really closely with our broadcast team on sort of streaming our theatre shows or our music gigs. And I really take a key role in the film production across the festival, which might include behind the scenes of our shows, telling the story of our productions, interviewing artists, and everything in between, really. So I suppose how I started off is that I had a really big passion for media. So I loved film, I loved games, I loved TV, and I loved culture. So of course I went to uni and I didn't study anything like that, because I just didn't think it was an achievable goal for someone like me. So I actually studied psychology, and in my final year, I thought about my next steps. I was working in a shop. I had worked in a call center, worked in loads of different places. I went to a documentary festival in Sheffield, where I went to uni, called DocFest, and that really inspired me to see the industry and sort of creativity on a large scale, and really see the industry at work. So I just sort of thought of my own plan of how I would get into doing something like this. So I did lots of research, which I think was key from my course. That's probably the biggest thing that I learned. So I taught myself to edit, and I did that through YouTube videos, which I think are a digital university in themselves. I taught myself to design, and then I also did volunteering as well. So I volunteered with anything that was related to sort of media or anything like that, just to show my passion and belief. So I did a range of things, sort of raising money for an international charity. I worked with a non-for-profit to break the world record for the most amount of people dressed as Sherlock Holmes in one place, which encouraged my project management skills. I learned about social media, I learned about press, I learned about marketing, and I also learned about producing events. I just sort of tried to gain skills with anyone, learned how to sort of film things. I did film reviews. I did a myriad of various different things. And then so when it came to sort of applying for things, I had at least something to sort of talk about in interviews. So I was able to get my first role in sort of production companies. And then when I was there, I think the key thing that I always did, or do now, even to this day, is just try to soak up every bit of knowledge. How did everyone else get to where they've got to? How do they work? How do they manage things? How do they approach things? How do they even send emails? Like, even to those details, and soaking up all of that knowledge. I would say one of my key parts of my career was in my last role, where I got a role at Creative England, and I was actually overseen by a director who had worked in Nintendo, and then my manager had worked at Universal, and from that I was able to gain even more skills, but using all of my voluntary skills and all the ones that I've worked at various different production companies to manage events, such as we had a series called Be More Creative. We had a series called Creative England Live, which was conferences really telling the story of the cross-sector interaction between film, games, and culture, and everything in between. I was able to develop some skills in script reading. So Creative England is an investor in sort of film, games, and those kinds of media. So we had various different talent development programs, which I was able to work across and learn from people and soak up all their knowledge. I was also able to produce digital events as well. So one in particular that stands out to me was a female, we did a series on female creators, so people, entrepreneurs, people, women that have their own businesses, and we paired them with an artist, and we scanned them in this sort of 3D iPad sort of technology, and made sort of 3D models of them, and they were able to be distributed on Creative Review. And then, yeah, so it's kind of built up. The more skills I had, the more I could talk about in the next thing. So from working there, I had all these different skills, and I thought about how can I apply all of these things together in my next role, which was at MIF. So in our department at the moment, we are bringing together all those things that I learned, working across the intersection of film and games and immersive medias like augmented reality and virtual reality. And most recently, we've launched a project called Virtual Factory, which has an array of projects in it, which we've been able to work across the research and development side of things. We've worked with artist Tai Shani to create a series of shorts on hallucinogenic experiences. We have currently got one in development with Robert Yang, who's creating a queer experience, a queer game experience. And our first project was with actually a artist curator avatar called Laterva Abadan. So we were able to create a project called Your Progress Will Be Saved in the game Fortnite Creative that had 1.5 million people view it in its sort of first month. So it's kind of those kinds of, that's probably my career to date, and that's how I got here.
Thanks for that, Kaya. Sorry, just conscious of times, it'd be good to go into the questions and we can pick up on other things as they come along. But yeah, this first question is directed at all the panel, and I will say do just keep your answers a bit short just so we can get to everyone's questions. But the question that we've had submitted in are, what are common misconceptions people have about working in festival and events? And are there any ways you have seen that can be addressed? Do you remember something that you've done or something you wished everyone was doing, and why? So I'll direct this question firstly to Kwang.
Thanks. I hope I can answer this. So working as a producer, we work quite closely with, by the way, there's a whole team of core producers, freelancers, associate producers. So when I'm saying producer, there's many people who, and different teams as well. So we work very much with the creative leads of the organization. In our sense, in MIF is John McGrath, the artistic director, and Mark Ball as the creative director, but also Phoebe as associate curator. There's many creative leads, but what I think are, so our role as producer are not necessarily creative in terms of the idea, because that's the artists, and also whether they're musicians or choreographers or stage directors or visual artists. The creativity of the idea comes from them, and also the creative leads. What we do is try to do the practicalities, if you like. So one of the misconceptions of being a producer in the festivals is that is maybe not creative ideas generating, but actually the creativity comes in problem solving. There's many different challenges in making the idea, getting the idea into some kind of way that it reaches an audience, whether it's digital, as Kaya was saying, to live audiences, to a hybrid, to communities, to art savvy audiences. So we have to hold many different things in the air, in a sense, to make it work. Particularly in the last year or so, COVID has obviously created such a challenge for all of us, everybody who's organizing anything, whether it's your own practice or something with lots of people. So I would say the learning from that is be ready to kind of change your thinking in problem solving. So everything is not a singular timeline. Multiple timelines come onto your spreadsheet, and actually producers is a bit of a joke, but producers love a spreadsheet. I mean, everyone here works with spreadsheets, right? We all work in Excel, and how to communicate and plan and budgets, spreadsheets, I think to be a producer in some ways, I think be ready to learn even more about spreadsheets, learn more about how you make resources work. And when I talk about budgets, I'm not even just talking about cash. I'm talking about things that people can do in kind with you, and buildings, people, lending. We have a lot of volunteers, for example. So there's many different ways of resourcing a project. I'll leave it there. I think that other people will have lots more things to bring in. Who's next?
I can jump in. I think that a common misconception is that you have to know everything. And I think I'm sort of applying this to sort of my own sort of team and sort of the role that I'm in, as it can be quite technical, it can be quite complex, but I don't need to know absolutely everything. That's where the reality of the situation is research is key, and bringing in collaborators, as Kwang says, who might have that expertise. I would say testing ideas, Google is obviously your friend, and yeah, if you don't know someone, if you don't know something, just ask someone that does, and that's how I've got to probably where I've got today.
Yeah, I might just follow on from Kaya. I think a common misconception is that if you start in a junior role or like an assistant role, which is what I did, particularly in like a big organisation like ours, that you can't make a difference or set up your own initiatives or change things in that organisation. And one kind of example, I think, in the role that I was doing was that when at Manchester International Festival, we have lots of equality working groups that kind of look at different focus areas of kind of people from underrepresented backgrounds across the organisation, and as well as like our audiences and participants that we bring in on projects. And in like January last year, I set up a social class and mobility working group because I recognised that this was something like an area that the organisation wasn't addressing that much. And I had no experience like kind of prior to that. I was often the one like minuting meetings and kind of in the background doing sort of things behind the scenes. But actually through kind of like setting up a working group, I had that role as like a chair, and it allowed me to develop more skills in kind of running meetings and to kind of have influence with more senior people in the organisation, and be involved in key decision making. So I'd say, yeah, that's one kind of common misconception, that you definitely can always find ways, whatever organisation or whatever job role you go into, and you don't have to be like the loudest voice in the room or the most confident person to do that. Amazing. Thank you for that, Rosanna. I'm just going to move us on to the next question, if that's okay. So that was submitted to us. What are some of the ways people in the cultural sector can make a difference in the world? And I will direct this firstly to Yvonne.
Okay, so the first thing I'll say in terms of making a difference is showing up and being your brilliant best. So I'm going to talk about the world that I know, which is the world of cultural fundraisers. And I'd say that they are enablers of work that has impact, work that makes a difference, and work that changes lives. For example, the funding that I bring in enables people who wouldn't normally attend a show or have access to art to be able to have those artistic experiences and attend shows. It enables people from local communities to have a voice in culture in their communities, in their villages, their towns, and their cities. Partnering with health services is another example that can help with patient care and patient recovery, that relationship between arts and health, which is being explored much more. An example in my work as a fundraiser in a cultural institution, my work is often, it often provides sufficient funding that enables our creative engagement team that Rosanna works in to pivot. So for example, in COVID, we about-faced and just started to do things very differently. It made the team highly responsive to the needs of local people because they had the money was there for them to be able to do that, and we could negotiate with funders in terms of how we're going to spend the money in different ways. And Rosanna will talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The other thing I wanted to say here was that during the pandemic, many fundraisers who work for themselves, so fundraising consultants, helped so many, particularly small charities, to successfully apply for lots of the emergency funds that have been made available by the government and private organisations. And that was a really key way that they could absolutely help these organisations get through the pandemic, survive the pandemic, and just make sure that, you know, the money that was there, they could access it, because without these fundraising consultants, they didn't have the capacity in-house to actually apply for the money and raise the funds. Over to you, Rosanna.
Thanks, Yvonne. Yeah, just touching on Yvonne's point there, where we mentioned supporting communities, and particularly at the start of the pandemic, last year, I think one of the like biggest ways, like at least in the team I work in, like we made a difference, was working on some of our projects that had working with a particular project called Manchester Street Poem, which supports people who had lived experience of homelessness in Manchester, and Talking Points, which works with kind of an isolated group of adults in North Manchester, and providing both of those groups with access to technology, so like iPads and phones, so that they could access our digital. We could turn our kind of engagement offer digital and make sure that we weren't excluding anyone. And I think holding those relationships with different groups of people, particularly when everything in the world's kind of so difficult and challenging, is a really important role.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Rosanna. And again, we're going to go into the live Q&A section now. And firstly, we've got a submitted question for Kwang from Fazola, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But yeah, for Kwang, Fazola is asking for your advice on working as an assistant producer at a theatre festival. What do you need to know? What can you anticipate? And how can you prepare for this role? Oh, you're on the dreaded mute.
Sorry, I was reading the question as well because we had that beforehand. I think to any kind of assistant producing role, I think you're already quite quite organized. You've got to be quite organized anyway. But I think I think I'll answer in two parts, kind of thing. You have the skills because anybody who's organized anything, however small, even your own practice or something with your peers, in a sense. And many people learn that way or learn on the job, in a sense, because those kind of things you can't teach. I think even though there are courses to teach you how to be a producer now, I think, in a sense, nothing like the real thing, gaining experience in doing that. So I'm going to, so some people will get into that route by doing stage management, doing their own projects, doing maybe organize smaller projects and then get into larger things. So often it's kind of building a reputation that you have got the skills, you've got a bit of experience, but then always ask, oh, can I do something more? You may be in a role of that's different to the assistant producer, or you may be in the assistant producer role, but you can say, oh, I've got capacity to do more, and I've got the skills. I may not have the experience. So I think it's about, in some ways, not waiting for the job description to pop up in a job advert. Is sometimes you might have to approach your network and say, actually, I would love to have the opportunity to work with you as an assistant producer in this instance, well, for Solar. I think the other thing is that I mentioned about project management or project management skills earlier. I think it's just to be really organized and to be really super communicative, because in the arts it's about building relationships with people you work with. It's not nepotism, but it's about building relationships with everyone you work with and keep, sometimes I see the most successful people is that they work with people and they may not continue to work with people over time, but they keep such a good relationship that they can keep in contact, and then if an opportunity arises, they can kind of go back into those networks and continue working. So I would say keep communications open, be really organized, and ask those questions. Don't wait for the opportunity to come to you. Create your own opportunities as well.
Amazing. And I've just got an audience question from Kieran, and I'm going to direct this at Kaya. So Kieran asks, I have no experience in the media industry. However, I want to be on TV for presenting and reporting because I feel I represent a race that needs a voice in the creative space. What are the entry positions that I should be applying for to make this goal come to fruition?
That's a really good question. And I think one thing that I didn't know early on in my career is that people have roles where they're looking for talent, where they're looking for to give people opportunities. They're looking for, it's literally their job to do that. So I would say, in particular, with the specific set that you just detailed there, I think social media and digital channels are probably where you've got the most opportunities to create and carve out your own career. So I think things like hosting and presenting can be done on YouTube, and I think, or other channels like Twitch, which is actually one of the biggest global channels in the world that not everyone's heard of. You can go live, you can present, you can do it on anything that you're passionate about. I would say I would keep that aspect of what are you passionate about, because you'll be able to talk more eloquently about it and you'll be able to be more passionate about it. And I think that's the thing with the social media. I mean, I suppose love it or hate it, it's here to stay. And I think I've got a lot of, I learned, you know, how to use social media for business early on in my career. I don't really have that many followers, but I always recommend to, like, my cousin, for example, who works in music, to use things like Twitter and connect with your community and gain opportunities through there, because I think she's probably got a couple thousand followers, but she's able to communicate directly and share her music videos, share her sort of producing skills, and she has gained opportunities through that. It's also really good for research, because you will find opportunities through that. People find the people that are sharing opportunities as well. And there's people that literally that's all they want to do on social media. I'd also say that careers in particular are not marathons, they're sprints. So I think in your particular instance, and a lot of people's instances, it's thinking about what the next step is, rather than you know, what you know, the mountain that is what can I do in 10 years time. It's incremental updates, I would say. Just keep putting one step forward to the goal that you've got.
And I've got a question here for Rosanna that was submitted into us. So Jordan asks, how do you start your own festival?
Thanks, thanks Ebony, and thanks Jordan. That's a really good question. I think, looking at MIF and where I work in the creative engagement team, we run a program called Festival in My House, or Festival in My Neighbourhood, that I know was referenced earlier. And it's a really useful model when thinking about setting up your own festival. So it starts with an idea for what you want to put on in your own house for your family, friends, neighbours, and then stretches it out to what you'd want to put on in your local area, and looking at venues like parks, libraries, community centres, local shops and things like that, and identifying what resources you need to do that. So I think even if it wasn't applying for a programme like that, I think using that as a kind of like an idea and a model is a really good starting point if you've got that kind of ambition to set up your own festival. And I would say, to work on your idea, you also need to kind of find friends or other local people, or maybe people online to collaborate with, who might have skills and knowledge in different areas to you, and would be interested in getting involved and looking for ways to bring in income or funding together. So you can look at things like maybe partnering with a local business, or looking at places like Arts Council, and a lot of towns and cities also have neighbourhood investment funds. But some of the kind of things that I know, like Yvonne and Kaya referenced earlier, there's always people you can reach out to at bigger organisations, and ask the question. Like, don't be scared to ask the question if people can share any expertise or any upcoming opportunities to support you in developing something like that. Yeah, hopefully that helped. Oh, you're on mute, Ebony, sorry.
Thanks, Rosanna. And I've just got another submitted question from Yvonne, and this one's from Yasmin, and she's asking about funding. So Yasmin asks, how do you acquire financial funding for the festival and events? Is it investors, sponsors, or partners? And I think you touched on this, but of course, do expand.
There's a bunch of of different types of funding, and yes, you're right, sponsors are definitely one of those, and partners. So for Manchester International Festival, there's a mix of funding for the festival. Sponsors, official partners, so that would be commercial businesses, for example, like Bruntwood. Public sector partnerships like Manchester City Council, Arts Council England, the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. So those are our public sector funders. We have media partners such as The Guardian, BBC, Manchester Evening News, so you get that national and your local coverage. And official providers who provide practical and creative services across the festival. And finally, we have trust and foundations, which is my world. And these are privately owned organisations who are set up and established specifically to provide grants to charities. And that's the sort of funding mix that our festival will utilise, but we're always looking for new, unusual, dynamic support. And we're venturing much more widely into commercialisation as well. But those are the key ones that will support a festival.
Amazing, thank you. And I'm just having a quick look through the Q&A.
Do you mind if I jump in? Hi.
Yeah, go for it.
So I wanted to ask just very quick fire questions to all of you very quickly, just to ask what your favourite part of your job is, literally like a line from each of you, because I think it's so fascinating to hear about the breadth of roles, and it's been really, and so I'm going to start with you, Ebony, because we haven't heard much from you. What's your favourite part about your job? In a sentence, just from each of you.
My favourite part about my job is that, yes, I do predominantly HR and recruitment admin, but it's all the sort of opportunities I get to do outside of my role. I support a lot of MIF's equalities work and diversity and inclusion. And also I work with other departments such as our skills and training team in terms of their factory academy, providing traineeships, apprenticeships and internships to young people wanting to get their start in the creative industry.
It sounds great. Very quick, Rosanna, favourite part of your job?
I think,
one sentence.
I think working with local people, so of all ages, and seeing them kind of take on like one opportunity or one small way of getting involved with us, and it lead into like a potential job or like really long-term engagement and staying involved with the festival.
That's so gratifying, isn't it? Yvonne?
For me, it's converting people from non-believers to believers. So people who didn't know about us, weren't giving us any money, and now suddenly part of the family, they're engaged with all our activities, and that's community engagement as well as digital stuff, coming to shows, and actually having that relationship. So cultivating something from a prospect to a donor.
Perfect, love that. Kaya, favourite part?
I would say it's collaboration. So it's being able to work with all of my different colleagues. It's working with our freelancers, our production companies, our artists, and working together towards one single goal, and then seeing it at the end and thinking, wow, I did a bit of that, or I was part of that.
Yeah, I like that. That's great. And Kwang, what's your favourite part?
I think it's working with artists' ideas, and particularly the challenging ones. And then seeing it
we won't ask you for names.
No, but can I just mention last year, 2 years ago at the festival, I worked with, you know that saying, don't work with children and animals. I work with both and outdoors. I vow never to work with those three things in the same project again, but that was really challenging. But like Kaya was saying, and everyone's saying, it's the whole team. It's not, it's actually how people have different skills and can lend each other, the complexity of the team to realize these challenges is the most rewarding
how many
thing.
people in total work on the whole festival, would you say? Like, what's the, I don't know who that can answer that.
Ebony, do you know that, or Yvonne?
If we start with our volunteers, who are usually in the 500 mark for the volunteers, and then scale up from there. So you're talking about a good, I don't know, 1,000 people. There's a lot of people involved.
And how long in advance do you start planning? How many years before?
I'd say 2 or 3, depends. On the artistic side, it could be 3 years, 2 years that they start talking to artists about the work.
Brilliant. I've got a question here very quickly, which is from Angeli, which I think is really interesting and pertinent for people across any industry, which is, what are the challenges that marketing an event that used to be in person and now online? Like, how do you kind of, I don't know who wants to quickly cover that. I'm conscious that we need to have quick fire questions now because we're running out of time.
I don't mind answering that. So the question in particular was what are the challenges of marketing events?
Online, marketing versus,
I would say that so I suppose to give a particular example, last year we went into lockdown and we created a series called MIF Live, and that was a series of live streams, broadcasts, and artist commissions as well. I think the challenge there, well, it was obviously great. We had new ways of working. We provided opportunities for freelancers and audiences, and we gave an offer to audiences at home. But the challenge there of working digitally was not being able to sort of tap your friend or your colleague on the shoulder and say, have you thought about this? Or just ask them a question or anything like that. That's completely gone. So you've just got to be absolutely crystal clear. Otherwise things get lost and things become more complicated. That is without a doubt the biggest challenge.
Ebony, the question for you from Simran, which is what are the opportunities available for people who might want to get involved in this year's festival?
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe we still have some volunteering opportunities still open. I don't think the deadline for that is till next week. There's also lots of different creative engagement opportunities in terms of participation, getting involved in the artistic shows. There's lots of different opportunities for on Festival Square in terms of if you're a live act like music or comedy or spoken word, you can get involved there. And we're constantly still doing recruitment for the year round in preparation for the factory as well. There'll still be roles on our recruitment website, which I'll share in the chat box that you can take a look at. So do keep an eye out for those and check out our social media as well for any updates.
Yes, very sensible. So quick question for Kwang, what are you most looking forward to then about this year's festival?
Sorry, I was typing something. Martin Milligan's Big Ben. So Argentinian artist Big Ben is going to come from London to Manchester into Piccadilly Gardens. It's a social sculpture. It's got politics. It's fun as well, but it's serious and fun and joyful and participatory and free.
That sounds amazing. That sounds totally amazing. Wow. Yvonne, do you know what you're most excited about?
I absolutely do. It's music on Festival Square. Free. We've got 3 stages. It's going to be amazing. I live in the city centre of Manchester. We've had no music, no buskers, no nothing.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Live music would be amazing.
Fantastic. Kaya, Theo wants to know what other festivals have inspired you?
Oh, that's a good question. I love festivals. There was a festival last year called We Are One Festival, and it's where all of the film festivals came together to create one mega festival. So they all had different programming strands, and they all came together to create like a series of really great talks, really great shorts. But what was brilliant about it is that you were seeing things that you wouldn't be able to see. You're seeing things in advance that you wouldn't usually see for 18 months or so, and it was all free, and it gave money to charity. They raised loads of money, and you could just watch it at home while you're in lockdown on your balcony or wherever you've got some sun and with some drinks. And that was just, I thought that was a really great offer.
Brilliant. That sounds really interesting. So Rosanna, quick one for you. The question is, if people are looking to transfer, if people are looking for a creative career but don't quite know what they want to do, what's your advice for people starting out that might want to pursue this kind of career? Or pursue something in live events and festivals?
I think just try it out in loads of different art forms. Like, we're lucky because our festival is like multi-art form, but there's there's obviously so many kind of specific festivals for music, and like Kaya was saying about kind of like documentary and film and things like that. I think it's yeah, like finding things like that, and even kind of online opportunities to produce content, and yeah, and maybe like make, like we were talking about before, like make your own festival. I think anything like that you can add to your CV is really worthwhile.
Sorry, Yvonne, go.
I was just going to say something on that. We're talking about looking at transferable skills. And so I often say to people, don't think about the jobs that you've done previously. Look at the skills that you've acquired while doing those things. And I was just replying to one of the questions, and I was saying, if you're the friend that organises all your friends for a night out or a holiday, then those are really useful skills in lots of different roles, like project management. So think about all the things that you do really well and think how those can apply to a job that you're interested in.
Brilliant. So last but not least, a quick question that either Yvonne or Ebony, how do you make sure that you represent society in all the programming and all that you're doing? Why is it important to do that?
I don't mind answering this one. So yeah, at MIF, it's really important to us that our workforce in particular is reflective of the communities that we serve, so we can better serve them in our programming as well in the projects that we do. And of course, we do this in terms of diversifying our recruitment. We advertise our jobs on platforms that aim to do that, such as Creative Access as well. And we also try and remove as many barriers as possible to applying for a role, whether that's removing education or industry jargon on our recruitment packs. And we also try and make sure that our workplace is as inclusive as possible. We have a number of equality working groups across different protected characteristics as well. And we always provide sort of diversity and inclusion training to staff in-house.
Brilliant. That's really helpful. I'm so conscious of time, and I know that we promised that we'd be finished by 6 o'clock. I just wanted to wrap up there. I know we've got so many more questions, and I'm really sorry to everyone that hasn't had a moment to answer their questions. It's been so interesting, and for me, I've really learned so. I know everyone's been like on our chat saying how fascinating it is, and we can't wait to see all the programming, especially Big Ben. I'm excited about that. So thank you so much to all of you. I wanted to highlight a particular quote which I love from Yvonne, and I shall remember this, which is, you've got to show up and be your brilliant best. So I think that applies to all of us, and I know that this team has definitely done that today. So thank you so much to all of you. Just to flag to our audience, our next event is in the end of May, and we're going to be looking at the world of publishing. We're very excited about this because we've got two of our wonderful alumni participating, which is Ria and Tangier, you can see on the screen. But I think the link to sign up will be in the chat. So we hope to see you then. And thank you again to the team at the Manchester International Festival. Wishing you loads of luck for this summer, and we will definitely be following you. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.